Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Robot Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Tolson, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation with Dave Johnson. Dave is the CEO of Dex AI Robotics. We'll be talking about the evolution of robotics and automation in the restaurant industry and where the restaurant industries for automation is going from here. Dave, welcome. It's great to have you join us. Before we dive in, can you start by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about you?
Yeah, great to be here, Mitch. So I'm the CEO of Dex AI Robotics, as you mentioned, and I'm actually coming to robots from a background in physics, where I was building atomic clocks. And as a hobby chef at heart, I decided to make the jump into restaurant automation to take some of that expertise in building these really smart devices and see how we could make a generation of future kitchen appliances.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. I as a weightlifter, I love talking about food, so I'm really interested in this conversation, and specifically robots and automation. I myself have been somebody that's grown up in startups all my life, worked at large companies, small companies, and I see this need for automation really helping to fill a labor gap, and I see it helping us scale in many different industries outside of factory automation. And so in recent years, I've seen a lot of these kind of new robot companies being popped up, and I know of many of these companies within the robot industry, in the restaurant industry, and I know Dex AI is one of those. So I also know that there's a massive labor gap within the restaurant industry, and talking to some other CEOs, they commonly say, well, these owners are coming to me saying, hey, if I can get your robot to perform this job that I can't find and hire somebody anyways, this is a really compelling, solution for me. And this market of cooking and automation restaurant, it's continued expected to grow and hit $114 billion by 2025. So Dave, you've been in robotics and automation space for a while. I want to chat with you about the problems that you're solving, specifically at your company, and kind of what you've seen at large. To talk about the solutions you're approaching within your company, and really where you see the market, going from here. So let's talk restaurants. What are these problems, challenges, opportunities that you see?
Oh yeah, the restaurant industry and really the commercial kitchen industry in general is going through a crisis that's really sort of unprecedented. There's market dynamics at work due to the pandemic, changing workforce demographics, that we're seeing really a labor shortage, which is it's hard to explain the scale of it. So something like a million unfilled positions in the food service industry in the United States. That's like, 3/4 of restaurants are understaffed. I was talking to one customer the other day, and they had 50 open positions for a total staff of 150, which it's hard to imagine when you're down by a full third of your labor force.
Right.
And it's this kind of environment where automation really plays a very strong role, because you want to increase the productivity of the chefs that you do have. And just like we've seen with industrial revolutions before, you go into this and you say, how can I take somebody who's really good at their job and give them the tools to be that much better, so that they can produce hundreds of meals by themselves without basically with the hands that they have. And we will. I'll dive into what Dex AI does, right?
Yeah.
We've
That's
taken
great.
this.
Do you see a difference between different types of restaurants and food industry? So like your very high end restaurant to your quick serve restaurant, does that labor gap kind of change across those, or are there different type of market needs that you're seeing within them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every every restaurant is kind of this miniature factory, right? You've got your raw goods which come in. And you've got to make food for your
Yeah.
customer, and they need to take the good from you right away. So it's this just in time manufacturing problem, which is tremendously hard to solve. And now when you take different types of restaurants and commercial kitchens, I'll put them all together. You have everything from ghost kitchens where you're making food for delivery. You have grab and go production where you're producing food to go into refrigeration shelves or grocery stores a day or two ahead of time. And then you have quick service restaurants, which want to feed hundreds of people every hour. And then you have these higher end dining experiences where you may only do a dozen covers at a very high end restaurant. And it can be very different across those different spaces. So like a high end restaurant may have more staff than diners at any given time, versus you flip that to a quick serve restaurant, and it can be you have two people and have a line out the door, right? These things are vastly different, but they share this common need of automation to be able to handle different foodstuffs, although it may be different tasks that they have to do.
So you talked on, automation as an opportunity here to help this industry. So what challenges do you see as we look at automating these different roles? I've seen stats of, anywhere from 60 to 82% of the roles in specifically a quick serve restaurant could be automated, but it's not just easy as, oh, just take a robot and put it there and it just does magic, right? Like we have to really think through that experience. So what are these type of challenges you're seeing?
Yeah,
Bringing
great point.
automation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it is really not a one size fits all, as you point out. And a chef or a line cook does so many different things on a day to day basis,
Mhm.
whereas a robot or automation tends to be very specific, right? It will do one thing and do one thing very, very well. So I think the way I like to think about it is improve productivity, right? So you can have specific tasks which may take a lot of time that you can have a robot or automation take over, while the chef is able to perform the kind of the edge activities like cleaning or talking to a guest or making a custom order or doing maintenance or all of these different things, which require this higher level of skill and understanding, but the rote repetition is able to be handled by machines.
I really like that. I see a lot of opportunity where like there's teams and companies they're trying to look at what's the entire workflow and try to automate all of that end to end. And it's like, well, wait, what if robots do the robot things really well and then the people do the people things really well? Maybe that's a better approach. Um, so how
Yeah,
about you? Go ahead. Yeah.
well, just to build on that, I think that is where automation has really proven to be very successful. Is that
Right.
you can't try, like, if you try and bite off too much and make a giant machine that does absolutely everything that is handled in a restaurant,
Right.
all of a sudden you start solving problems like, how do I actually open a cardboard box to get the egg
Right.
carton out to be able to,
Yeah.
and those, like, there are so many problems that are just not impossible to solve, but very, very challenging to solve. Whereas
Right.
a great example of like what we do is, right, a robot which is assembling meals. It's a pretty specific thing that's very dexterous and hard to do, but it's an enclosed, a contained task, as opposed to
Got
opening
it.
up the entire restaurant.
Got it. So yeah, let's talk about Dex AI, right? Like tell me about Dex AI. What is it? What's your product? What are you working on? And why this? Why now? And really why restaurants of anything that you could, go after and help improve?
Yeah, great question. Well, I mean, the why restaurants is easy because food is fun, and the hospitality industry is a great place to be. And build what you want, right? I really
Right.
like what you said about, hey, I'm a weightlifter. I like food. I
Yeah.
share that. I enjoy food quite a bit, so it's like, hey, let's build a product that solves an important need, but also you get to eat your mistakes, which is
Love that. Yeah.
now. So what we do is we build artificial intelligence software for robots, which enable them to handle utensils. So this means we've taught robots through trial and error. Basically, they're learning on
Mm.
how to manipulate food using utensils like human chefs do. And so this has a couple of amazing advantages because it means that the food tastes the same as it was prepared previously. So the robot doesn't change how the food tastes because, if you were picking up rice with a spoon, you could do the exact same thing before. You can handle a huge variety of different foods. So everything from poke to ice cream to burritos
Hmm.
to pizza to grilling steak to, you name it. You basically can do most of the activities in the kitchen using utensils.
Hmm.
And it's fundamentally very safe because from a food safety standpoint, because utensils are able to be washed, they're easy to clean. We've been doing it for thousands of years, so it's like let's not break what's not broken. And so then the hard part, though, is then how do you teach a robot how to do that? And our it's not the easiest thing in the world.
No.
And so we use a combination of computer vision and reinforcement learning, which lets the robot go and understand what it means to put a spoon into guacamole and how that is different from using a pair of tongs to pick up a steak. And after trying that many, many times, the robot is able to perform a large number of assembly tasks. And then we give our customers a platform which lets them input their recipes and
Mm.
again, don't break what isn't broken. So we think of
Yeah.
assembling a meal as following a recipe. So the robot has an understanding of what a recipe is. You put that, you encode that recipe, and then the robot is able to make that recipe if it knows how to do each of the tasks in the recipe. So if you go and take your favorite just using an example, I have this salmon that I like to make, which has a
Okay.
glaze,
Okay.
and which is a maple lime juice glaze. It's delicious.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that recipe involves taking a certain amount of maple syrup, a certain amount of cornstarch, a certain amount of lime juice, and some spices, and then stirring it and assembling it. So you would say, our customer would say, if they wanted to make that, they would put in those ingredients and those quantities, and then the action, which is to place them in a saucepan, and then the action of stir, the action of apply a certain amount of heat. You can do the exact same thing with a chicken Caesar salad, right? It says this recipe contains 3 ounces of chicken, 6 ounces of romaine, and an ounce of Parmesan cheese and an anchovy dressing. And then the order that you put them in is you put the greens first, and then the chicken, and then the cheese, and then the dressing. And both of those, they're wildly different, but they both follow recipes, and they have a certain amount of tasks of
Mm.
picking up these different ingredients and making them. So to the customer, it's a very simple product. You just put in your recipe, and if the robot knows how to manipulate the material, it can do that. Now
That's
the
awesome.
magic is
So
in
yeah, what I hear a lot is like we talked about the market and like kind of the why, and you're talking a lot about like what you've done here, but there's this middle element you're kind of talking about a little bit is how you have approached this problem. So like I've seen some robot companies, they'll come in and they look at, all right, I'm designing this whole apparatus and it's going to like cut the pizza, pepperoni slices, right? And it's like kind of more looks like a little micro manufacturing line, right? And you've
Mhm.
kind of went to the other side of that, it sounds like, in using utensils and kind of using what humans already kind of interact with. What's the thought process there, and why'd you pick the path that you're on?
Great question. I think the reasoning behind it is that we wanted to make a product which was closer to an appliance as opposed to a manufacturing line. So this
Got it.
this idea that we wanted automation that you could install in your kitchen in 15 minutes or less. This idea that you shouldn't have to recreate the kitchen. It's like you want to take your neighborhood restaurant and say, how can I give you a tool that's going to help your chef today? As opposed to saying, well, first you've got to close your restaurant and remodel your kitchen, and you're going to spend, several $100,000. It's like, let's make this much more like a new oven or a mixer. And so what we have is we have a robot arm, very similar to the one behind you, that sits on the counter, and they're light, they're small, they're collaborative. And by using utensils, it can work with existing kitchen furniture, which is very, very important. So you don't have to change what your kitchen looks like. You put the robot down, the robot is able to recognize the ingredients in the workspace, and then use utensils to pick up and manipulate those ingredients. So it's kind of like this philosophy of, hey, we're building a small thing that sits in existing kitchens, as opposed to taking a manufacturing line approach.
I really like that, because you start kind of you break it down even a little bit more, and you say, well, these utensils, they fit in the dishwasher. And, all of these other like kind of supporting systems and processes that make that assembling a burger or salad or whatever it might be possible. That's great. So from a like a product standpoint, you see this opportunity with a particular customer or a group of customers, and you have this product, Alfred, that have created a while ago and working on improving. What are kind of these product level challenges that you've seen specifically with the restaurant industry and bringing automation to restaurants?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the hardest part about working with a complex automation solution like this in a restaurant is really getting good internet.
Yes. The good nets. Yes.
Once you have that solved, then everything is easy. But that's sort of just a quick shorthand for the broader problem of, hey, we're taking a very high tech solution and putting it into in a place which is fundamentally very, very low tech, and you're changing a little bit of the way of the workflow through the kitchen, and you're working with users that are used to a certain way of doing things. And so I say that the biggest product question really is, how do you integrate well into a workflow without being complementary to it as opposed to disruptive? So you want something that is able to do a task that is already being done in the kitchen, is something where it increases the chef's productivity and it feels transparent to the user. And we had a customer that we were talking to the other day, and he was working with the system, and he said, "Wow, the thing that I really like about this is that and how simple it is. It's like there's effectively like one button, and you say, hey, make my recipe, and you don't have to do anything else, because you really don't want it to give you more complexity, because it's like using a blender. You press blend and it should do the thing, as opposed to
I love that. Thinking about the user experience, I think, is really critical to a path of success. Like if you bring in something new and then you have to spend just as much or more energy on training the users of it, now you have a ton of adoption friction. And how are you going to get these deployed, right? Nobody wants to use it. So that's awesome. That's great. I at my core, I'm an engineer, and I am somebody that when I see something that, like what you're talking about, just kind of works, right? You push a little button. Simple from an engineering standpoint is very hard. So can you share a little bit about more of the engineering side of the challenges that you guys have faced and how you've kind of overcome those over time?
Yeah, that's. I think you really understand the problem when you say simple is hard. It's really like the hardest thing is to make a system which doesn't have any problems, because it is able to correct itself from small things which go wrong. So if you only have one button, that means every little thing that the robot runs into, it has to be able to correct itself. And I think that one of the things that has been a key part of our journey is making the system understand its environment in such a way that it's able to make small corrections and do it in a safe way. So we focus a lot on computer vision and really recognizing what's going on and adding a layer of understanding so that the robot can recognize common errors and then do things to be able to correct for them. So I'll give a couple of examples. Like our robot uses utensils. And so what happens if a utensil is not there or the utensil is not quite where it's supposed to be? So you want the robot to be able to figure that out and ask for help. And then if it does ask for help, it has to do it in a way where it says, hey, this is the exact problem. And, and ask the operator to come and fix the exact problem and have that actually be the thing which is wrong. Otherwise, you're wasting somebody's time.
So I want to dig on that one just a little bit more. You say, ask for help. I think you're touching on a very, very important how. So unpack that a little bit more. What do you mean by ask for help? And you talked about an operator coming in. Describe that some more.
Oh yeah,
I think that's important.
Point. So we think of the robot as it's this collaborative machine which is working with and alongside the human chef, and when it runs into problems, you want the human chef to be able to fix those problems because what we touched on earlier, there are so many edge cases and larger parts about the kitchen that the robot doesn't have any understanding about, nor should it really. So for instance, it doesn't know that utensils are washed in a dishwasher. It doesn't have any concept of that, right?
Right.
The only thing it cares about is that it has its utensil and it's able to perform the task at hand. And so then when we say ask for help, we really mean communicate with the operator. So you would say, put up a message on the app or a signal to the operator in some way that you need to come over and, hey, check this out. But then add information which lets you know what you actually have to do. So
I'll guides them through that.
Yeah, exactly. And then the system is much more user friendly because you don't context switching is hard. Like if you get flagged by a colleague and says, hey, hey Mitch, can you help me over here? You have to stop what you're doing, go and do something else, and that's hard. Whereas if you say, hey Mitch, I'm out of tomatoes, can you get some from the back? It's a little easier. And so then we want the robot to say exactly that, right? Hey, I'm out of tomatoes. I'm supposed to be making you a Greek salad that has tomatoes. And so then the operator can help the robot. And then you can take it one step further, which is we say, actually, hey, as the robot can tell, I'm supposed to be making 15 of these Greek salads. I know I actually only have enough tomatoes for 7. By the way, I'm going to tell you that you're going to have to get me tomatoes. You're going to have to get me feta cheese in about 10 minutes. And that's so that great. You can actually get to it when you're ready as part of your natural workflow, much more in a collaborative way, as opposed to all of a sudden the sirens go off and it's the robot stopped. We're helping you out.
I mean, just in simple, maybe simple, complex, just any type of product development lifecycle, you think about dependencies. And if you don't understand your dependencies, that incurs schedule delay. So this isn't a micro instance of hey, if you're not, how you're going about it, you're presenting, I'm going to need this next time. That gives the supporting crew to be able to come in and fulfill that dependency before it becomes an impediment. I love that. That's a way to make a smoother workflow. How about from the other side of things? So it's one thing to conceptualize, get all these product feedback requirements and all that, and then engineer it. But what about deployment? You have to deploy these things. What type of things have you seen there? What's some maybe challenging aspects and maybe some success stories you've had?
Oh, so the internet requirement is not a joke. I think every kitchen we've gone into, there has been some problem with getting a proper internet, and I think that one of the things that has taught us, and really that we understand now when we go to new client sites, is we have a very clear checklist of like an experience that we walk through that now is much more curated than it used to be. And so where you can say, okay, we understand what it means to put automation now in a kitchen, and this is what you have to do to prepare for the robot showing up. And it's kind of obvious things when you think about, like, if you're going to install a new oven in your house, you have done some preparation ahead of time, but people have a concept of what it's like to install. Like if you're calling a plumber to install a sink or put in a new gas line, you have some conception, some preconceived notion of what that looks like. Automation, all people don't know what that really looks like, and so by helping them understand what hey, the robot's coming, we have to, you have to have proper internet. This is what the first day is going to look like. This is how we set it up and get it going. That's I think that's been a big learning, and a lot of robot companies have definitely gone through this. It's certainly not unique to us. And then, but I would say also, though, that on the success story side is that when you do that work ahead of time, we took a robot into a new client site, and the refrigerator was already there. It was all set up, and we just unboxed the robot, put it on, plugged in the internet, hit the power, and the robot, boots up and says, "Okay, we're ready to run." I think it was about 20 minutes from like door to powered on robot, ready to start doing making food.
That's awesome.
And that's the benefit of this idea of the robot as an appliance, because just like an appliance, everything's self-contained. It's set up. The only thing, we only need one 120 volt outlet. It's like plugging in a computer, and it's more akin to mounting a TV on your wall than anything else.
That's awesome. That's amazing. What other things across your company that you think that you're doing that are unique, important, that, it's like, if there's that one thing you wanted to mention, what is that? What's that kind of, like, maybe I'm talking about the secret sauce of DexAI, like, what is that key thing?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of like really core things that go on under the hood, that's sort of the secret sauce. But I think that the important thing that really, especially from our customers and partners, is that what we've built is sort of this platform of a robot which is able to handle a wide set of tasks based around this concept of operating utensils, and then also by extension equipment, which an oven or a grill is sort of has the same concept of the utensil that the robot can interface with it. And then by having that platform, we are really recipe and cuisine agnostic, which is our the thing that's so important, is that although we may really enjoy food and I enjoy cooking, I don't want my sense of taste doesn't matter to the customer at all. And we've seen that, and that's been really powerful, because we've gone, one customer of ours, the U.S. Air Force has a robot in one of their Air Force bases, and the robot makes like a Cobb salad, which is like just picture perfect for what an Air Force Cobb salad should be. It's hearty, it's got a lot of protein, it's big, it's exactly what you want. Yeah. And then you go to another customer, and they had a Mediterranean falafel salad, which was light. It tasted, it's completely different, right? You would say the chef there's no overlap between the two chefs there, and the power of the platform is that the technology is really transparent, so that the chef's vision can come through, and it makes what the chef intended, without having any input from us in terms of how the food is going to taste. We make the recipe as you describe it, and that's, I think, the most important thing about our technology, is that we're definitely not in the recipe business. We're in the a pair of helping hands business.
Is that a process that you work with that customer ahead of time before deployment of figuring out refining that recipe, or is it a deploy your Alfred and then kind of train on site the recipe?
Oh, so we offer customers basically all ingredients that we already know you can
Uh-huh.
have just right out of the box.
Got it.
And then if you have other ingredients, like what was one we just did, like a mint couscous. It was not
Yeah.
something we had done before, but the robot learned it really quickly, and now every customer could have was able to have that ingredient, and you you then can mix and match however you like.
Mm, mm. So we've talked about your company. There's many different, team members that make it work, right? And I'm specifically interested in leadership teams' feedback on their own success stories and challenges they've faced to drive have this vision, curate the vision, and then drive it forward. So I know that there's a lot of listeners that are going to be, looking and listening to this of what can I do? I have this idea. I want to start my own company, right? Like, how about you as a founder? What could you share from a learning standpoint with our audience?
Yeah, I think my favorite story about this, and which I think is so important for founders, is that there was a favorite pitcher of mine for the San Francisco Giants, who was really famous for like this idea that all positive feedback like went straight to his head. Like he heard all the positive feedback; it was amazing, but negative feedback just didn't like. He could have the worst day, just like slipped off of him, didn't had no effect whatsoever. And so he was learning from the positive feedback, and it didn't, and anything bad happened didn't let him down whatsoever. So and I think you can't quite go to that extreme. Like you've got to learn
Yeah,
from both things. But founding a company, as you well know, right, is based
yeah,
on this idea of a healthy dose of naivete and the like firm vision that it will all work out in the end. And
right.
if it hasn't worked out yet, it's not the end. So you've got to like have this ability to really stick to your idea and your vision, and then and execute on it. And
Right.
it won't necessarily be the same thing you thought you were going to build at the first day that you founded your company, but every single thing you do, you've learned from, and then you've evolved and finally produced something that your customers are happy and excited to have and to use.
I love that. That deeply resonates with me as another founder. I would also add grit. It takes a lot of grit, just that perseverance to keep going. That's awesome. So we've talked about your company and the restaurant industry and some of these challenge learnings that you've had. How about the broader automation industry? How do you see some of these challenges you're solving in the restaurant industry could be applicable to other opportunities beyond restaurants for robotics and automation?
Oh yeah, that's a good broad question. I think that one thing that I've been wondering, or and is very related to this, is that we look at industrial automation, which has been incredibly successful over the last 30 years. But the price point of that automation is often well above what
Ah,
you can
yeah.
put in a lot of places. And
Hmm.
then you have to ask yourself, it's like, hey, what like if I take something like an electric drill, like a battery powered electric drill, you have this piece of technology which is rugged, it's incredibly durable, and it's really cheap now. It's got an electric motor, it's got a battery, it does all this stuff. Why can we not have automation tools and solutions which are as good as like the power hand tools that you can buy at Home Depot or your favorite hardware
Yeah.
store these days? Instead, we go and we buy like a rotary actuator, which is like that electric drill, and you'll pay 10 times as
Hmm.
much as what it costs you for the drill. And that what that really means is now you have automation solutions which done in the traditional way end up being incredibly expensive, and they just are
And
not
therefore not
practical.
accessible.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not
yeah,
accessible then.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we really need a like the consumer electronics or this this the handheld power tool revolution to come
Yeah.
to automation in such a way that you can you're not paying $1,000 for every degree of freedom. You can get something that's $100 per degree of freedom, and then all of a sudden there's so many things open up. Like if we had the robot behind you for under $1,000, it's like it would be tremendous.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So let's assume we had that, right? Like what do you think that would do for the robotics automation market? Like how do you foresee that changing that whole industry
Oh,
and industries it's supporting?
well, then I think you see many of these things go to a much. You see many more things automated than you have
Mm-hmm.
today, and uh, and because the understanding or like there's many tools out there to understand what the thing is that you want to do, but then it's too expensive to put the actuator and everything in place and have it be reliable and robust to make that full system, which becomes useful. And so that's that combination of the intelligence, which we've seen machine learning and those sort of
Mm-hmm.
tools make a lot of advancements. Uh, Combined with the low cost of actuators, and then this ability to make systems robust and respond to their environment, that would let you put automation in a lot of industries which don't currently support it because it's just far too expensive. But if you don't have those three things, this ability to understand your environment, the ability to actually manipulate your environment, and then your ability to be fault tolerant or respond to failures, you can't put those three things together and do it at a price point which is relevant for the task at hand. Then you don't see adoption. So
You're not
by
solving the
driving
problem then.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you can
Yeah.
drive the cost of that physical system down by 10x, then you start see. Just like we have cameras which are now everywhere because the
Right.
digital cameras cost has
Plummeted.
plummeted.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So maybe a tangent topic here. I like to ask other founders. So if somebody's interested in robotics automation, they have a problem, they want to solve this, and they want to start a company, right? Or maybe they're already an existing entrepreneur. What would be the kind of the golden nuggets you would give as advice to these people before they start on their journey, or even if they've already started, the kind of like, hey, wait, make sure that you do this.
Well, I think the best advice that I got, and I will keep saying it because I think it resonates very, very well, is if you are thinking about solving a problem with automation or robotics, take a couple of months and try as hard as you possibly can to solve it any other way than automation or robotics. And only if you cannot solve it any other way, and I really mean any other way, then attempt to automate it. Because you often underestimate how challenging it is to actually make a robust automation solution. And then the other thing that I think is really important for us to touch on here is that the ecosystem of robotics and automation in general is changing rapidly.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And we're seeing a lot of tools coming online, even like I started DexEye in 2018, and the tools available then, software tools compared to what you have now, it's night and day, right? It's
right.
Completely different.
Right. ROS2, things like that. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So what is that the final question I have here is, what is that thing that you're most excited about for the future?
Oh, So what am I most excited about for the future? That's
Yeah.
a very good question. I'll limit it maybe a little bit to
Sure.
automation or
Yeah. Great.
robotics and so on. I think what we're starting to see, and which I think is tremendously powerful, is we're just on the cusp of having so many smart devices which are able to talk to each other, and the ability to be able to interact or to build a product which interacts with many devices that you have in your environment, whether it's your house, it's a commercial kitchen, it's your car, all of these things. Like having the ability to talk to them, send them commands, receive data back and forth in a very transparent way. So it's seamless. Like I don't know if you remember. Even if you think back 20 years ago when you had a computer and you wanted to put a peripheral on a computer, it was like a nightmare.
Right.
It's like, did I have the right driver for my printer?
Right.
Like nothing.
Right.
It never worked. But now
the worst was when you got a network card and that was your means to get the driver, but you didn't have the disk. So it's like, I can't get the drivers on the computer because I needed this to get to the internet. Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah, exactly. Like remember, it used to be that you would get a CD or like that had the drivers on it. Oh my God! Like this is
right. Yeah,
and that's just is not a thing anymore. Does not exist. But in automation or in robotics, right? We're still in this in this phase where interoperability is not a thing. It's not. Devices don't have a common language that they speak to each other, and you aren't able to share data seamlessly across platforms. And because of that, when you're building automation solutions, so much time is devoted to the simple act of getting the communication, getting the data correct, before you can even start putting the really intelligent smarts on top of things. And so what I'm really excited for is when we have basically the equivalent of web APIs for physical devices in a broadly adopted way. And then we can see this massive explosion that we saw in web companies really come to the physical world, because now that interaction layer can be handled in a seamless way. And I mean, even for our business, right? Like as soon as we're able to talk to know what everything is happening in a kitchen, it's just transformative with what you can do versus just knowing what you can. Like the robot right now only knows what it can look at, and as soon as you know absolutely everything that's going on, there's so many more exciting things that open up, and then more broadly, like everything about. From, like I said, from the home to your car, there's just a tremendous opportunity here.
I love that. As somebody that spent a lot of time implementing different types of robots, from arms to AMRs to all of it, it really, what you're talking about resonates with me from the standpoint of we really need this collection of dynamic semantic interfaces for all these like peripheral devices that we want to interact with, because we as humans can look at things and perceive and understand. Well, a robot just intrinsically can't do that without our help and input. Dave, this has been a great discussion. Thank you for just spending the time. There's a lot we could talk about. I certainly heard a lot about and loved you guys' approach of the kind of the appliance model, right? And kind of fitting right within that the user's workflow. I love that. And I hear that advice on network connectivity and just kind of site readiness. And yeah, that's awesome. So before we wrap up, is there any other advice or kind of final thoughts that you have for our audience for today's conversation?
No, well, I really enjoyed the conversation, Mitch. I think it was a great. Glad to have been on the show, and I'm really excited to see what the next generation of entrepreneurs comes up with, especially as we start building the tools for them to build many great products and devices on top of this new layer of I guess the smart world or connected world.
Awesome.
And
Cool.
if somebody could build me that really cheap, cheap actuators, I would love that too. Like, let's, like, I don't want to be in this this world of super expensive things anymore. We need the consumer electronics of automation.
That shameless plug for Ally Robotics is that's one of the things we're working on is a low cost robotic arm that is really designed for everyday automation. Trying to touch on a lot of these key elements that you touched on here.
Yep.
So for the viewers, you can find out more about Dave and DexAI by visiting dexai.com. Dave, thanks again for joining us today and sharing your insights, and stay tuned for next week's episode. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.